line?
Yeah, Amarav. I see. Next word. So 17a, and we are 6 lines down. Amarav, 6 lines down from the white lines. The cost of a henpik. A guy finds a loan document, and it has in it written a henpik. A henpik, as we explained, is the verification for documents. The modern equivalent would be the notary stamp.
Mm-hmm.
The henpik of their times was a signature by the court. 3 members of the court would verify the documents. The cost of is money by biyom. Okay, so very interesting. So you find a loan document, and it's dated the day that you find it, and it's verified. Now, in order to verify a document, like we spoke about yesterday, you need to have both the claimant and the defendant present. The borrower and lender both must be there. So here's what's going on. You have a loan document that was clearly written that day. It was verified that day, and now it's lost. You find it. So what's the deal? Okay, so what Rabbi Yehudah says, Yachzir l'ba'im, give it back. Why? If what's the concern here? What's the problem? Maybe this is a loan document where no loan was ever issued. Well, that can't be, because then it would not be able to be verified. The court will only verify it effectively if the borrower admits to the loan, right? So if clearly that this is a valid loan document. And if we're concerned the guy paid back the loan, it's highly unlikely that he paid it back the day that he borrowed it. So Zera says, well, there's another problem. Could it be that Rabbi Yehudah said this? But Ravasi also said in the name of Rabbi Yehudah, okay, so who is this? This is Zera is trying to point you to another problem. Maybe he paid back that day, and he's reissuing a new loan the same day. And the general principle here is that if you use a document, you write a loan document and you give him a loan, and then loans repaid. You're not allowed to reuse the same loan document, because the shibud, the lien in that document has already been forgiven. It has already been forgiven from the time that the loan was repaid. So now, exactly what is the situation that we're going to be using this document for? Amos, when exactly was it repaid? He borrowed it on Monday, he repaid on Tuesday, and they want to reissue the document on Tuesday. Use the same document for a second loan.
Tuesday in person, or just general stuff on anybody?
Sorry?
Someone wants to use this loan document a second time?
Same person, same borrower, same lender. If they'll say that the loan document will be reused the next day, the day after the loan was issued, or a couple of days later, which is probably what happens, right? Guy pays back, and then a few days later he decides he wants to take out the loan again, so he gives the guy back the same document. Well, then there's another problem. Why is the reason the document can't be recycled? Because the lien in the document has already been forgiven. There's another much bigger problem. Typically, the havale muktam, the document the date in the document predates the giving of the loan. And the general principle on that is that you're not allowed to do that. If the document was predated, it's invalid. It must be biyome. It happens the same day. Clearly, somebody would pay back a loan that the day that he borrowed it, such that Rabbi Yehudah says you can't reuse the document even the same day. So Amar Lei, Ravasi responds to Zera. He says, "Mikim like pari cloud shchiach into the pari biyom kamma." I'm not saying that nobody ever pays, but it's not impossible that somebody would pay back a loan the day he borrows it. It does happen. However, it's unlikely that it occurs, and therefore, because it's unlikely, you can return if you find a document and it's written the day that you find it, and it's verified. You can still return it to the lender to allow him to collect. Because even though it is possible that the borrower will pay back, it's not likely that happened. Rav Kahana Amar. Rav Kahana says, what are we talking about? Kishechayev Maida, where the borrower admits. If the borrower admits the loan is still valid, you return it to the lender. The other scenario, okay. So the Gemara says, if the borrower admits Mila Memra, it seems to be obvious. Obviously, return the document. The Gemara says, "My time, I would think coming for Pari Vahadik Amalei Pratiam Shnikabo Mahadi Lisflei Beis Manach Migdol Pshid Safar Chayesh Kamash Malan." Imke Malva Gufa Leshavak. Okay, again, so what exactly happened? So the borrower, there's a loan document written the same day it was found, and it has a handpick. It's verified. The borrower admits that there was a loan. I would say maybe it's true the borrower is admitting there's a loan. That's because he wants to reuse, he already paid back the loan. He wants to reuse the loan document. And what does he gain by reusing the loan document? He doesn't have to pay for the scribe again. He avoids paying for the scribe. And therefore, I would think that maybe we cannot rely on the document. We should not return the document because the document is not valid. And the document will be used to collect without authorization because the document has already been repaid. The fact the guy's lying about it is just to save himself a few coins. We're not okay. That's why I would think that we should not return the document, even though it's verified, even though the document was written the same day, because there's a concern here. Maybe the document was repaid. However, the reason why this concern is invalid is very simple. Because, one second. Kamash Malan, the imkain malva gufe leshavak. The borrower, the lender would not allow this to occur. Why? Savar, he thinks sham berabon umafsedili. The rabbis will find out and they'll invalidate the document, and then I will lose even the principal of the loan. So in other words, over here, okay. So the borrower would not allow the lender to reuse a loan document the same day because what's the gain? Let him just write a new document. And this way the lien will be real. Because if the lien is fake and the document is fake too, because it's not a valid document, it was already used once, the rabbis will make him lose the entire value of the loan, and therefore he will not agree to such an arrangement. So Gemara says, is that the case? Is it the case that whenever the lender is concerned that the rabbis might invalidate his document, he won't agree to what the borrower is saying? It's not the case. Why? From the Mishnah that we saw before, a guy finds a loan document, and this loan document has a lien in it. The Kimna, and we explained that the borrower admits that the loan is still valid, and yet what's the concern here? You find a lost document, right? It has a lien in it. Borrower admits, lender admits. You do not return the document. Why not? Because he might collect from the lekuches, right? The lekuches, mishubadim, lien. He might collect properties with a lien on them. Meaning, the borrower may have sold properties earlier, prior to the loan being given, and those properties will be taken unjustly by the lender. The loan was only given in Tishrei. The properties were sold between Nisan and Tishrei, and the document doesn't have the correct date on it. Okay, clearly, the point here is that the lender will admit to a valid document to be able to collect prior to when he was actually able to collect. And we're concerned about that. And we don't give a counter argument and say, well, the lender would never agree, because maybe he'll lose the principal of the loan if the rabbis found out about it. Over here, he is going to lose the principal. He will lose the principal of the loan if the rabbis find out, because the document is not valid in this case. And yet he still plays along with the borrower's lies, allowing him to collect before he's justly allowed. One second. Okay. The Amrina didn't came Malva Gufela Shavik. The Amr like Seif Sharach Mani Betishrei. The Dilma Shamer Barim Afsdile. And we don't find that the lender is sort of this strong arbiter of the truth, and he's not going to play along with this game. We are concerned to play along with the game of the borrower, and lie about the date the loan was administered. And we don't say that the lender, why would the lender lie, and the rabbis might make him lose the whole thing. He would lie anyway, even if the rabbis would make him lose the whole thing. The answer is very simple. Before we get to it, just explaining it outside. The answer is very simple. In our Gemara, the lender has no gain by lying. Let's explain. The loan was issued on today, which is the 17th of March. Okay, the loan was repaid the same day, and the guy wants to recycle the same document, take out the loan again. If the lender says, "Look, let's write a new document," right? He gets exactly the same privileges as the first document. He could still take sold properties from March 18th, the next day, because you don't write the time of day in the document, just the dates. So therefore, you can only collect the kuchas in the next day, the 18th. So if you write a new document, the lender has everything to gain and nothing to lose. He doesn't lose anything by by writing another document with the same date on it. But if, on the other hand, the document was recycled and the rabbis find out, he'll lose the principal as well. So therefore, he says, why would I gain nothing to potentially lose the principal and save the borrower a few coins? Make the borrower rewrite his document. He has to pay for the coin. He has to pay for the writing, the scribe anyway. And this way, the document will be accurate and I'll have exactly the same privileges. However, if the borrower has a different set of privileges, meaning he can steal, in other words, or he can do things that are unjust, like collecting for an additional 6 months, right? Instead, his actual loan was administered in Tishrei, but the document is dated in Nisan. So over here, he's going to collect for an additional 6 months from Nisan. So maybe then he would lie. It's true he's taking a risk. He might lose everything, but it's a risk worth taking because he gains from the risk. Like we said, what we were discussing, there's no gain. Having two documents both written the same day gives you identical privileges. So why would you take a risk of a loss when you can have no loss at all and exactly the same privileges? Yeah. So over there he has a potential gain, illicit gain. And then he agrees to lie from the Omer but over here he has no gain. He has the exact same privileges. The date of the document would be the same. So and for the benefit of the 1 second here. Yeah. There's no gain in terms of when he's able to collect from buyers from his lien, and therefore he would rather not deal with a document that's technically speaking invalid, even if he thinks that nobody will find out. There's always that risk, and it's not worth dealing with that risk. Okay, we continue our discussion with Tayin Achar Ma'aseh Bezdin, arguing against a court enacted law. What is a Ma'aseh Bezdin? But we'll have to soon see. There are many different types of Ma'aseh Bezdins. Ma'aseh Bezdin is an act of the courts. An example of an act of the court, like we explained previously, was a hempik, a verification. But there are other examples of a Ma'aseh Bezdin. For example, paying for damages is called a Ma'aseh Bezdin. A ksuba is called a Ma'aseh Bezdin as well. Okay, you can't exactly argue with with the rule of a court, and we'll explain in detail in a moment. My time, what's the reason? If the court gave a ruling, then you have the same the winner of the case has the same privileges as if he carried a document stating the court's resolution. So let's concretize this. So Rav Chia says, isn't this our Mishnah? If a woman a woman says she was divorced. She proves it. She proves it with her divorce. However, for any maksuma, she doesn't have a ksuba document. Goivik ksubasa. She collects a ksuba. Okay, again, ksuba is a ma'isa bezdin. It's a court requirement. It's a requirement of the rabbis. Have the actual ksuba document, but we treat it as if she does. As soon as she proves she's divorced by bringing her divorce, so then we allow her to collect the ksuba, even if she doesn't bring the ksuba document.
So it's because you can't have a get without ksuba.
What do you mean?
If you don't have a ksuba, you can't get a get. A get would be in nothing. If you're never married, a get means nothing.
Okay, so I don't want to answer you yet. Just hold on for a second. Okay, let's explain. Typically speaking, a person, when they get married, a husband writes his wife a ksuba. Okay, so there should be if they got married, there should be a document. The rabbis say that it is forbidden for one to live with his wife without a ksuba.
And without knowing where it is also.
Right?
Right?
Yeah,
And
correct. You have
without
to know where it is. Okay, otherwise, if you have one, you don't know where it is, that's lost. Right? Okay. So the idea here is there should be a ksuba. She doesn't have one, but we know she's divorced because she has a divorce. And we allow her to collect a ksuba because ksuba is a requirement of the court. It's a ma'isa bezdin. So Amar Rebbe responds, "Ilav daloy lechachaspa loy mashkech marganisa tuva tusa." Let me just get the reference here in mind for a second. So Rebbe basically says, had I not lifted up the paper, you would not have found the diamond underneath. Meaning, without me explaining this, you wouldn't have realized that I was in the Mishnah. Okay, very nice. However, we have the objection of Abaya. Okay, Amr Abaya. Abaya says, "My marganisa. What diamond are you talking about?" Dilma b'makom she'en kaisin ksuba askinan. There were many locales in which they did not write a ksuba. Okay, and maybe when in other words, normally if the woman got a ksuba, she has to collect with a ksuba. But in a town where they do not write a ksuba, that's where the brisa says, "Oh well, okay, you don't have a ksuba, fine, you can collect with a divorce, obviously, because how else are you supposed to collect it?" Yeah.
Pay attention, please, Rabbi. First one line.
To get a couple of lines down. To get Hanuk Subasa, the divorce effectively is the same as a ksuba. But in a locale where they do write a ksuba, in a kitik subasa gavya, iloy loy gavya. If she's holding a ksuba, she collects. If not, not. So Gemara says hadar amar abaya. Then Abaya says maybe not. Lav milsi damri. Maybe I'll take back what I said. The Isag died of Magam Shein Kaising Suba Skina and of Magam Kaising Suba in a Kitik Suba Gave Eloi Gavia. Okay, so Abai is going to say as far. Abai was trying to argue. What was I just telling you? I was telling you that in a town that there's a ksuba, you need to collect with a ksuba. In a town where they do not write ksuba, so what do you collect with?
Divorce.
With a divorce. If that's true, that statement can't be true. This presumption, in other words, Rabbi is trying to undermine the logic of Rav Chia Barabba in the name of Rav Yechon. He's saying that the brisa used to support Rav Chia is incorrect because it's a place where we don't write a ksuba. Rabbi says, no, the logic of that claim is fundamentally wrong. The logic of the claim that you can, where there's a ksuba, you must collect with a ksuba. Only where there's no ksuba can you collect with a divorce. That logic is wrong. Why is it wrong? And if we're referring to a place where they do not write a ksuba, we have a problem. What's the problem here? One line, last word above the wide lines. Almana, first wide line. How exactly does a widow from Erison collect? So we explained that, right, there's two parts of Jewish marriage. There's Erison and Nisuin. Erison happens through a process called Kedushin. Nisuin happens through a process called Chuppah. Today we do this all together. We do Erison underneath the Chuppah, and we do Erison and Chuppah all happen at the same time. Okay, but technically speaking, you can divide it up. If you have an almana, so the husband gave Kedushin. They were in a state of Erison, and the husband dies. How exactly does she collect her ksuba? Be'edei misa, must be she collects with witnesses that say that she died, that say the husband died. Be'edei misa's baal. Says why can't the inheritor of the husband say that they counter argue that they paid back? How is it possible for her to get her ksuba? Heirs can say I repaid. Okay, let's go backwards. Let's go back for a second before we go into this. Initially, we're saying that if there is a court ordered ruling, which every ksuba is an example of, then you cannot argue parat. You cannot say it was paid back. Okay. Says Abaya, no, maybe it depends. In a place, that's only true when they don't write a ksuba. The husband cannot say he paid back. So the woman produces a divorce. The husband can't say I paid you because it's a ma'aseh bezdin. You can't argue with a ma'aseh bezdin. Okay, that all makes sense. In a place where they write a ksuba, maybe, well, in that case, you have to actually bring the ksuba. Now, ask Abaya, if that's the case, you have to actually bring the ksuba. A ksuba is not written prior to the nisuin. The ksuba is not written during erison. So the woman whose husband dies, the witnesses come and testify that her husband dies. Okay? It's a town where they do write a ksuba. Why can't the kids, the inheritors, say, we pay back? And there is no ksuba document because she's in a state of erison. And if you'll say that they could make the argument, well, then she'll never be able to collect the ksuba. There's no point of requiring her to pay, requiring the husband to give the ksuba when we know he'll never have to pay it. Because the inheritors will always say, I pay back. So Amalei Marchisha Breder of Chizar Rashi, Valmadam min eres and Isak Suba Minolan. So Rav Chizar says to Rashi, well, I'm sorry, Marchisha says to Rashi, well, who says she had ksuba in the first place? Who says you get ksuba from erison? Maybe you only get ksuba from nisuin. Ilem mihadetnan. It's Amrlan Iskar. Shabem and erison bem and nisuin. Goyves akol. That you collect whether she was widowed or divorced, whether it was from erison or nisuin, in the first or second stage of marriage, she collects the whole ksuba. Simar says, well, maybe that's where he wrote her out a ksuba. If you'll say Ma'ala Memra, what's the chiddush? This would seem to be obvious. If he wrote her a ksuba, obviously, she can collect it. So he wrote her a ksuba before erison or for erison, and then he dies. She collects ksuba. Well, obviously she collects ksuba. There's a ksuba written. Why wouldn't she be able to collect it? Why wouldn't she be able to collect it? And the answer is, okay, so there's a key word here. What's the key word? She collects everything. What does everything mean? So as we explained before in the past many times, especially when we're learning ksubas, standard Ashkenazi ksuba is all standard. It's all the same. In Ashkenazi ksuba, they're all identical. There's 200 zuz of ksuba. There's 200 zuz of taisis ksuba, presuming the woman was not previously married. Otherwise, it's 100 and 100. Half that. Okay. Now, there's two components of ksuba. There's the Iker ksuba, which is the 100 or 200, plus the taisvis, the additions. In a Sephardic ksuba, the taisvis are added according to the family's wealth and social status. And it can go much, much higher than the 200 zuz, the Ashkenazi small amount of money, relatively speaking. Now, goyves akol means she collects the principal plus the taisvis. Rabbi Dovid Yehudah says, no. The extra amount of the ksuba, you never collect that until nisuin. You'll never collect it during erison, because the point of it is to get married. Why are you giving your wife such a massive ksuba? The 400 is to seal the commitment. That's erison. The next amount, the larger chunk of extras, what we call taisis ksuba, extra ksuba money, that's to marry her. You didn't marry her, you don't have to pay it. So the point of this brisa is he did write her a ksuba, and he also wrote her taisis ksuba additions. He wrote her, another $1 million in ksuba, which happens in some Sephardi families, very, very wealthy ones, obviously. And what happens in the chiddush here is, the point of the brisa is that you have to pay both of them, even from the time of erison. Both the principal ksuba, the 100, 200, plus the $1 million on top of that. Rabbi Dovid Yehudah says you don't pay the $1 million until they get married. The rabbi is saying, no, you pay the whole thing if you wrote out a ksuba.
can write it through the earlier.
So if you did, you could, right? This price is talking about where you did. And Dekanami, I have proof to you. The Tani gave us a call. It says you collect everything. What do you mean everything? The cost of Lahan, the Tani gave us a call. If you wrote out a ksuba, it makes sense to talk about everything because in a written out ksuba, you have the principle, the 100, 200, the main decree, plus you have the the $1 million on top. Now, but if you didn't write a ksuba, there's no additions. The additions are only if you have a document. If you don't have a document, there are no additions. It's just the basic amounts. Yeah, with the low cost of law, my guy a call. What does it mean you pay? You collect everything. There is no everything. She just has 100, 200. Okay. So again, let's structure this Gemara again. Let's just review the structure of the Gemara. Okay, so Rav Chizda starts off and says you can't disagree with a court decree. What's an example of a court decree? A ksuba. Okay. Rav Chizda proves it. Abaye says there's no proof. Then Abaye says that I said the proof is invalid is incorrect. The proof is valid. Why? Because it's impossible for in other words, Abaye proposes that the only time you can collect a ksuba with a divorce is when they don't write a ksuba. Says Abaye, well, how is it possible for a widow to collect a ksuba? It must be that my counter argument is incorrect. And then the Gemara says, well, maybe the counter argument is also incorrect. So the original argument is correct. Why is the counter argument incorrect? Because it's based on the fundamental proposition that a widow of Erison gets ksuba. Gemara is saying, well, that we haven't yet brought a source for that. It could be only a widow of Erison gets ksuba if the ksuba was written. So Abaye's counter argument now is not proven, meaning his first argument against Rav Yochanan, disagreement with Rav Yochanan, is still stands. Perhaps if you do not have a ksuba, you collect with a divorce. If you do have a ksuba, you must bring a ksuba.
So the town where you don't have to write a ksuba.
Then you collect without a ksuba. You collect with divorce. But only that town.
But you don't get the extra. Just get the basic.
Yeah. In that town, there is no extra part.
Can they make it?
Okay. The Elamida Tani Rav Chia Barami. Elamida Tani Rav Chia Barami. Rav Chia Barami brought a brayso that says Ishtar Rusila Einim V'Lei Metamala. V'chein He Lo Enenes V'Lei Metamala. Okay. So during the state of Erison, during the state of Erison, if the woman or the husband dies, then they're not in a state of aninas. They don't sit shiva for each other. They only sit shiva when they're married. And if he's a kayan, he's not allowed to become tamei to her. And moreover, yeah, he's not allowed. And moreover, if they were married, we would require him to become tamei. He must bury his wife. Same thing is true in the opposite, both husband and wife. Mesa, if she dies, any yarsha, he does not inherit her if she dies. Mesu, if he dies, however, goivik subasa, she collects her ksuba. Okay, well, clearly we see here that an almana from Erison, a woman who's in a state of Erison and loses her husband, does collect a ksuba. No, not necessarily. Why? The cost of law. There was a written document. The cost of law. Obviously, if you wrote a ksuba, obviously she can collect it. So Gemara says you're right. The point of the brayso is not the ksuba; it's the other list. Mesa and yarsha strichale. The point of the brayso is that if she dies, he does not inherit her. His inheritance of his spouse is only if they're married. They completed nisu and not just eris. Okay, so the Gemara says El Abaya migufa de masisin kahadarvei. The reason why Abaya changed his mind is from the Mishnah itself. Let's explain. The Isak to get Tainuk Subasa. Okay, if according to Abaya's proposition, when they do not write a document, you can collect from a divorce. When they do write a document, you must bring the documents. If that proposition is correct, 1 second. Otu get mana masayim ksevbe. Does it say in a get 100 or 200? Doesn't. Meaning, how do you know how much to collect at any point in time?
Standards.
The get doesn't specify whether he married a basula or a baula.
Oh,
1 second. Okay. In other words, let's explain here. Abaye, let's move backwards a little bit. In an act of court, you cannot argue I paid. Says Abaye, no. There's no proof of this. Your proof is that you can collect a get without you can collect a ksuba from a divorce document, which is not a ksuba. Abaye says, well, maybe the get is the ksuba document because they don't write ksuba documents. So the Gemara is saying, well, even if that's true, let's say a get is the ksuba document because they don't write ksuba. So in effect, Abaye is saying, look, this is not an act of court that doesn't have a document, does have a document. The divorce is in place of the ksuba. So we together? Says Abaye, it still would be the case that it's a ma'aseh bezdin. Why? Because we don't know how much ksuba she got. Did she get 100? Did she get 200? So she has to lay a claim of 100 or 200. That's not written in the document. That claim is that would be part of the court order of the concept of ksuba. And he would not be able to say, I paid you back, or you're a ba'ula, not a basula. So clearly, even if Abaye's counter arguments are all true, he still would have to concede the fundamental point, which is in a court ordered procedure, you cannot argue I paid. You cannot dispute a court ordered procedure. Together? One time. If you'll say that the rabbis, that because the rabbis decreed it, it's as if it's written in the divorce. Let him argue he pay back. If you'll say, okay, 1 second. Okay, so what argument? 1 second, hold on a second here. Okay, so Abaye says it must be an act of court. I think Gemara proposes maybe not. Maybe it shouldn't be considered an act of court because because the rabbis decreed that this should be the ksuba in a place where they don't write the ksuba, it's as if it's written in the document. If it's as if it's written in the document, then we go back and we do not need the argument of ma'aseh bezdin. Because ma'aseh bezdin was supposed to fill in for what wasn't in the document. But now the Gemara is saying, well, maybe the rabbis decreed that it should be considered as if it's in the document. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. But you still can argue parati, I paid back. And if you'll say, well, you can't say you paid it back. Because if you say you paid it back, then you should have destroyed the divorce. Amar lon shavakton. Amar be'ina len suve. She says, I can't rip up the divorce because I need to remarry. And if you'll say, well, maybe you can write on top of the divorce, meaning you destroy the divorce, and then you write a new divorce that says, this is not a divorce, but there was a good divorce, and Ksuba was paid for it, and this is testimony that there was a good divorce, so she can still remarry. Gemara says, is it the case that everyone who's collecting Ksuba is collecting it in court? It's not the case. And therefore, it is possible that she can have a divorce document and legitimately, and the husband would still not be able to argue I paid back. Why can't he argue pay back? It must be because it's a ma'aseh bezdin. It's a court order decree, and you cannot argue against the court order decree. So the Gemara Abaye was proposing originally, you could argue with the court order decree. What about the fact that you're collecting a ksuba from a divorce? That's not called the court order decree. The ksuba. The divorce is the ksuba. We're saying no, not really, because the divorce is not really the ksuba. If it was really a document, if it was equivalent, well, then you can argue that it was paid back. And there is no counter argument. Well, if it was paid back, why is there still such a document? Because maybe she requested the divorce, she requested the payment outside of the court, and she needs the divorce to remarry. Why can you argue that the divorce was paid? Parati, I paid back, because it's a ma'aseh bezdin, and Abaye effectively is conceding the point that Rabbi Yochanan made. Let's continue with the Mishnah. Matzah gitei nashim v'shechruri avodim. He finds a divorce, or he finds a emancipation document, or daitiki matana, a record of a gift, v'shoivrin, or a receipt. Hareza lo yachzer, you do not return these documents. Why? Shinaymer ksuvim hayu, they were written in advance of a potential need. Nimlach alen shaloi litnan, he decided he would not give the document. Okay. Let's see another few lines. We'll just introduce the concept. Okay. So the Mishnah points out time of the nimlach shaloi litnan. The concern here is that maybe he changed his mind. However, let's say the master or the husband says that the document is valid. You can give it. I divorced my wife. And we give it. But even after it's only been found a long time later, document went missing for a few weeks. What's the problem here? The problem is Shnei Yosef ben Shimon. That's the problem. Remember Yosef ben Shimon? Yosef, there was a certain town where there were two people whose names were identical, and the names of their wives were identical. And the potential concern here is, which we'll have to address tomorrow, maybe this document is not even his document. It's just there's another person in town with the same name, same his wife has the same name too, parents' names are the same too, and he didn't find his document. They didn't find the document of this divorce. They found a different divorce. The other Yosef ben Shimon divorced his wife. Okay, and that discussion, that question we'll leave off for tomorrow. Okay, yeah, have a great day.